of things happening to our children now that we need to look at as a nation and that are being completely ignored. When my uncle was president, 6% of American children had chronic disease, of Americans. By chronic disease, I mean categories: obesity, neurological injuries like ADD, ADHD, speech delay, language delay, tics, Tourette's syndrome, narcolepsy, ASD, autism, food allergies, peanut allergies, which I never saw in my life. I have 11 siblings, I have 70 cousins, none of them have food allergies. Why do 5 of my 7 kids have those allergies? And then autoimmune disease. Rheumatoid arthritis, juvenile diabetes, these exotic diseases like Crohn's disease and lupus that we never saw as a kid. A kid, 6%. 1986, 11.8%. By 2006, 54%. And this is one of the problems with our military. They're not eligible for military service. We don't know what it is today, because after 2006, NIH stopped publishing the data. It's probably 60% of our kids have autoimmune, allergic, or neurological diseases. You see EpiPens in every classroom. You see albuterol inhalers. You have, in some classes, 70% of the kids are on Adderall. They're diagnosed with ADHD. What's happening? Autism went from 1 in 10,000 in my generation to 1 in every 34 kids today. And it's not because we're seeing it suddenly, because then you'd see it in my generation. I've never seen a 69-year-old man with full-blown autism. By that I mean non-verbal, non-toilet trained, head banging, stimming, toe walking, hand flapping. I've never seen that in a 69-year-old man. But in my kids' generation, it's 1 in every 34 kids. EPA, Congress said to EPA, tell us what year it started, the epidemic started. EPA came back. EPA is a captive agency, but it's captive by oil, coal, chemical, and big ag. It's not captive by pharma, because it doesn't regulate pharma. So they came back with an honest study, and they said it's a red line, 1989. Well, as it turns out, these diseases, most of them started on that same timeline. Around 1989, peanut allergies suddenly appear, obesity goes crazy. We go from 6% of having obesity to 45% of kids, 75% overweight. It's not because they suddenly got lazy, American kids. It's because they're being mass poisoned by something. And why aren't we asking the question, what is that? What is happening to American children? We have the highest chronic disease rate of any nation in the world. We have the highest COVID death rates. We had 16% of the COVID deaths in this country. We only have 4.2% of the world's population. Why is that? Bad management, number one. Number two, it was chronic disease killing these kids. EPA said of the Americans who died from COVID, on average, they had 3.8 chronic disease. They had diabetes, asthma, obesity, and one other, or some other group. We have the highest chronic disease rate in the world, and it's bankrupting us. When my uncle was president, 6%. Now it's probably 6%, but if you look at Medicare bills, we're paying a total of $4.3 trillion a year on healthcare, and 93% of that is going to chronic disease. It's an unnecessary cost. And nobody's asking the question, why is it happening? Oh, there's a doctor in New York, a toxicologist, a very famous toxicologist called Phil Landrigan. And he's a guy I've used as an expert in many cases. He's actually done studies and said, what could it be? You have to find a toxin that became ubiquitous in 1989 and the early 90s and affected every demographic in our country, from Cubans in Key Biscayne, the Inuit in Alaska, and affects boys in neurological injuries 4-to-1 ratio to girls. Oh, he looked at some of these questions and he said there's only about 13 things it could possibly be. One of those is glyphosate from Roundup. One of them is neonicotinoid pesticides, atrazine, which is in 63% of our water, high fructose corn syrup, which follows some of that timeline, Wi-Fi radiation from cell phones, which I've won a case on in the Court of Appeals, and then there PFOAs, which is a forever chemical. It's a flame retardant. It was put in all of our kids' pajamas on that timeline and all of our furniture, and there's a few more. The easiest thing in the world is to actually go do the study, identify what it is that is making Americans so sick. And that's 93% of our healthcare costs. Let's eliminate those toxins. That's what I'm going to do when I get in there. I'm going to go in and I'm going to tell all these scientists from EPA, we're not developing drugs anymore. We're going to give infectious disease a break for a couple of years, and we're going to find out, why are we the sickest people on the face of the earth? Why is that happening to America? And we should all be talking about this issue.